Final team we're going to talk about is the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans are in a bit less of a pickle, I would say, than either of the two teams we talked about previously, if only because they have a lot of assets on their books right now. They don't necessarily have the star power of the Lakers and Suns, but they do have like a lot of really good players, and they have a lot of assets that they can trade, including an incoming Lakers pick either this year or next year, on top of all of their own picks, that give them real flexibility to be able to make moves. This will be an offseason preview for the New Orleans Pelicans as well. And I'm excited to kind of talk about what makes sense for them moving forward and how they go about building their roster. I thought David Griffin, gave really interesting comments today, kind of talking about how they've been patient in the past and how they've decided to kind of potentially move into a different direction.
Our takeaway has always been, let's see this group healthy. I think we've seen it enough. I think we had some really, really good opportunity to see Zion play a career high in games. I think we saw it for segments of time well enough to understand that we've got a lot of work to do. And again, because it is a historically good Western Conference, there's teams that didn't make the playoffs that are going to get radically better this offseason. We need to do the same. And I think you'll see a real sense of urgency from all of us to do that.
The fact that they're talking about sense of urgency is interesting because A, Griff kind of does this every offseason, and that's a real thing. But B, they have to make moves this summer now. Like, they are now in a circumstance where they won 49 games this year, and Griff is absolutely right. They looked really good at times winning 49 games this year. But they're coming up on some decisions that they have to make this summer, particularly, that are complicated. So their core under contract that I would consider like unmovable guys. Zion Williamson, I'm not moving him at this point. I think he looked great for stretches this year. He's the guy I'm building around. Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, unless I'm getting a superstar coming back, I am not moving either of those guys. And then you have the CJ McCollum deal, who I think is movable like entirely, but 2 years, $64 million. I think he would look great as like a third or fourth option as opposed to the number 2 option he was asked to be in the playoffs. They have Jonas Valanciunas and Najee Marshall, both of whom are free agents that are valuable. Both of those guys are going to get like real money on the free agency market and like should get real money on the free agency market. Dyson Daniels, Jordan Hawkins, EJ Liddell is there. Larry Nance has a 1-year deal left. Like, they have a lot of guys kind of at the end of the roster as well. But like, the big decision here is Brandon Ingram. He's the number one guy here that they really need to make a choice on. And I don't know what that choice should be. Or I know what the choice should be. I don't know what it will be.
Yeah. So I will say, I think at this point, you have to hitch your wagon to Zion Williamson. Hope that the games you got from him in the regular season is something you continue to get. Hope that, obviously what happened in the playoffs doesn't happen again, but I just don't think it matters. Like, you are playing in this world with Zion Williamson as the cornerstone. And to me, that makes the BI conversation a little bit easier in terms of, I really like Brandon Ingram. I don't think I love the fit with him and Zion. You have wings and Herb Jones and Trey Murphy coming, and you have some other depth there. I don't know what Brandon Ingram's trade market and value would be. I would assume you could find somebody to give you some legit assets. I think based on the fit, I would move BI on top of the fact that I wouldn't want to have to lock him into the bigger contract he's about to get. Is the extension eligible this summer? Is that right?
He's extension eligible, and he has 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah. So I think I like BI. I like him as a player. I think he's better than what happened in this Thunder series, but I think I would at least see what I could find.
I think he is not a fit in New Orleans. And the reason that he's not a fit in New Orleans is honestly why, like, I would have some concerns about him fitting in a number of other places, right? Like, we talked about this yesterday with the Pistons for a minute, right? Like, Brandon Ingram has been brought up with the Pistons here and there. And I think that is a terrible fit with Cade Cunningham because Brandon Ingram likes to catch and hold the ball and stop and survey and like take 2 dribble pull-ups in the mid-range. I think him and Cade just kind of like operate in the same areas. And I'm like not sure Brandon Ingram's better than Cade Cunningham right now, point blank. And that's me thinking Cade is really good and like having some questions now about Brandon Ingram. But like, I think Brandon is a good player that needs to like speed up his processing and like speed up his decision making on the court and just be more aggressive and be more physical and like be willing to not kind of be the perimeter only guy that we've seen for stretches of games throughout his career. It's he's a really talented, excellent player.
Absolutely.
It just is hard to find the exact fit that works based on his style of play and based on the fact that there are 30 players plus in the league that are better than him. So he's never going to be like the number 1 guy. He's going to be the number 2 probably.
Yeah. And he's about to ask for, I would assume, a huge number for his next contract.
Yeah. No, I think I think Ingram is the guy that they have to move this summer. Like if you were making me pick like one former All-Star that will be likely traded this summer, right now, I think Brandon Ingram would be the one that I would look at as like most likely just given the dynamics of the situation. That comes from no reporting inside the Pelicans organization. That's just purely looking at what the Pelicans need and what like what we've seen from them and finding a fit for the Pelicans in, as David Griffin put it, a historically difficult Western Conference, finding a way to upgrade and given the contract status of Ingram, I think that this is the summer where you basically have to move him.
Okay. So that's where I wanted to go too, because here's the thing. And I realize it kind of sounds like we're just, going all in on Brandon Ingram. And I want to emphasize, we think he's a very, very talented player. But the thing is, if you don't have the pathway to a very good number 2, then I would keep Brandon Ingram, even if I don't love the fit, because is there anybody else on this roster that is a number 2 to Zion? We just, like you just said, CJ is a solid number 3, high-end number 4. I agree with that. I don't think he's a number 2 option, especially if you want to win in the playoffs. Is Herb Jones ready to step into that? I don't think so. Is Murphy ready to step into that? I don't think so. Not a number 2. So what is the path then to getting me that second option, second best player on the team behind Zion? Because if I don't have that in place, then I am better off keeping Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, that's where like you really have to scour the trade market for potential options. And that is where the fact that they have all of these assets moving forward, I think is really important to note, right? So like they have this incoming Lakers pick at some point, right? Whatever that is. They have number 21 this year. They have, I believe, like the Bucks pick in 2027. They have all of their own picks through 2027, 2028, 2029, 2020, or 2030, 2031. Like they have, I believe, a pick swap with Milwaukee, not next year, the year after, maybe. So you have potential options at your disposal to do things, to go get that next star for Zion, right? To me, for Ingram, I'm more just looking for like guys that I think really fit next to Zion. If I'm moving, or like, look, if I can do Ingram and picks to go get a star, like, great, let's do it. This sounds amazing. I'm for it. Having said that, if I can't, I'm more looking for like good players that make sense to me.
Do you think you can build out this team? Like, do you think Zion's good enough? And then like these 3-and-D wings and what CJ can do, like, do you think you can build out the roster that way? Just like, I don't know who the true number 2 option, second best player is, but we'll just put enough of these guys I guess a little bit like what the Knicks have done with Jalen Brunson, right? Like Brunson, I realize completely different players. I understand that it's not a great comp, but like who's the second best player scorer on the Knicks during this postseason run?
I mean, it's probably been like Josh Hart, to be honest with you.
So exactly my point, right? Like you have this one really good player, and then you just put all the perfect pieces around them, especially if they can space the floor and defend. Maybe it works, right? Like the Knicks are being pretty successful with it right now. Is that the path the Pelicans can take? Is just let's continue to double and triple and quadruple down on floor spacers and defenders around Zion Williamson.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe like that's not a bad idea to me. Like I'm for that as an option. I think that makes sense. The issue is I'm like really trying to find, because if I'm the Pelicans, what I want in a Brandon Ingram deal is I want a center that really fits next to Zion Williamson.
Yes.
Because Jonas Valanciunas is a free agent this year. I like the answer to that is like I want a center that spaces the court, and I want a center that like can really step out and shoot and be able to like help Zion with that and be able to run like inverted 4-5 with like pick and pops and things like that. I don't know who that is on the market right now. Like I don't know if there's a name, because like if I'm the Pacers, I'm not moving Miles Turner, right?
And we like Isaiah Hartenstein, but that's not him. We love Isaiah Hartenstein. That's not him.
So like one option that feels like kind of crazy to me is if you're the Bucks and you lose in the first round, do you have to like completely blow this thing up a little bit, like around Giannis and Dame, and like try to move Middleton and try to move Brook? I don't think they'll do that. I think that they'll just like base it on, hey, we got super injured, we got super unlucky. Yeah. Let's run this back with Giannis and Dame one more year and kind of see what this looks like, kind of thing.
I agree. Lopez would be interesting. Like that we've talked about, again, we talked about it yesterday on the pod is, we all love these floor spacing bigs, especially ones. I think with the defensive infrastructure they would have, well, I don't know. CJ is a negative defender too. You still need a rim protector. Those guys just don't grow on trees. There's just not enough of them.
Yeah, no, there's not. And like, I think the Spurs are going to be like super patient with the guys that they have, like with what they're doing to build around Wemby. So like, I don't know that makes sense for them. I don't know that I like the idea of like Memphis going all in on Brandon Ingram. I guess it's not impossible, like, but that feels, I don't know who they would even do to like match the salaries even. You'd have to do like Brandon Clark and like Marcus. I guess you have the Kennard deal. Actually, you could have like Kennard pick up that team option and do like Brandon Clark and Kennard, and that gets the money close. And then you could just like add assets, and then like you could do like Aldama in that deal, maybe, if you like the idea of like a spacer next to this. The other option is something that Basketball Genesis just brought up. The guy you're talking about is Alex Sarr.
Yeah, but I mean, how are they getting there?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like, what if you're the Pistons?
No.
Look, again, it's not a deal I would do if I was the Pistons. I would rather just do the Alex Sarr thing. But like, I don't think the Spurs would do Brandon Ingram for one of these picks. But like, let's say that like Brandon Ingram's available for number 2. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like that feels bad to me. Like I wouldn't do that. I would still just rather have the pick, I think, this year. But I can see other front offices just being like, no, I would rather have.
Would the Blazers want Brandon Ingram?
It's an interesting one.
I'm literally just looking at the lottery order. You know what I mean? And it's like,
but again, though, like you would need to get up to like 1 or 2 probably to get Alex Sarr.
Where's the odds?
What odds are you looking for?
Well, Portland has 13 points. I mean, they finished 4th worst. I mean, they have essentially.
No, they would have a chance. It's just like you would need to know what it looks like. You know, like we need to know what the lottery is. Yeah. Right?
That was just, I was just looking like, I don't think it makes sense in Detroit. We've talked about it. There's some things that make, anyway, Charlotte doesn't make sense to me. Washington's not trading off of Sarr. Portland is a team that to me would make sense trading off of Sarr and a team who maybe wants to build this thing out quicker, not completely go like they're going to take a wing, I would assume, with their pick. So if they got high enough to draft Sarr, you don't draft him because you have Ayton and you have whatever you're going to do with time, Rob Williams, and we've talked about Duop Reith. And so we don't need to draft Sarr. And instead of drafting some young wing, we'll bring in Brandon Ingram to play with Scoot and the backcourt that, we talked about that situation. I don't know, but that's the one team that's in the lottery that would make the most sense outside of maybe San Antonio.
And they actually have the money to do it because they could do like Matisse Thybulle and Malcolm Brogdon or something like that. Like, yeah, I guess like Malcolm Brogdon, Matisse Thybulle, Alex Sarr. I still wouldn't do that if I was Portland. Still wouldn't do that. I mean, like Jeremy Grant exists there too. Like that's a complicated one because they both are like kind of ball stoppers a little bit. I probably wouldn't do it if I'm Detroit, or I probably wouldn't do it if I'm Portland. I mean, like Memphis is like kind of an interesting one to me because he's just like really not a Memphis guy, I feel like, but Memphis does have the money. Like they can do the Kennard and Brandon Clark deals and throw in John Concher and do that lottery pick for Brandon Ingram. And it's a wildly expensive roster at that point, but they do need to consolidate a little bit in terms of just like guys they have on their roster. I don't know, like that, if they would move up and like you'd be certain of things. That's not, Memphis is interesting. Memphis is more interesting the more I think about it. I wouldn't do it, but I guess it's like not impossible.
I was just looking for any teams in the league that have this floor spacing big that where it would make sense.
Yeah, no, it's hard to find. It really is. Like this is the, and this isn't to say Brandon Ingram's a bad player. He's a really good player. The other team that like I can really see doing this is again like Chicago or Brooklyn, like teams that just like need star power, right? You need to go find stars somewhere. And Brandon Ingram like can be a guy that at least like kind of moves the needle for you, especially like fan base wise. Brandon Ingram has like a great fan base. And again, like I want to be clear here, like Brandon Ingram, not a bad basketball player, like actually quite good at basketball.
Yeah.
Averaged 20.8 points, 5.1 rebounds, 5.7 assists this year, shot 49, 35, 80. Here's the other thing with Brandon Ingram, though, that I think a lot of people don't realize. Brandon Ingram has never played more than 64 games in a season since his rookie year. So like his rookie year, he played 79. After that, it was 59, 52, 62, 61, 55, 45, 64. He misses like 20 games a year.
Yep.
That's a real problem. Like that's a real significant issue. And that's something that will hold back his trade value a little bit, in addition to him being on a 1-year deal.
Yep.
Part of the thing is like, I don't know if Brandon Ingram will get to like the, level of trade value that people hope and want.
Because of all these different factors.
Yeah.
No, I think that's probably right.
It might be their best move to do something like Ingram and picks to try and get in like to a bigger star deal from one of these teams that's contending. That like Kevin Durant would be like the ideal for them, right? Like if they could go get Kevin Durant, like let's do it. But I mean, like, could you do Brandon Ingram plus stuff for Kevin Durant? Like a lot of stuff, not just a small amount of stuff, like Ingram, Jordan Hawkins, Dyson Daniels, and like picks.
Yeah.
Like picks, like all of them, right?
Yeah.
Not impossible, I guess, but I don't see it, right?
I think I like that better than, I think I like the idea of pairing BI with assets to go get a star that makes more sense than I do trading BI on his own for just some of these random pieces, the more we've talked through it. But star hunting isn't easy. And so again, there's going to be plenty of other teams on the market for those stars when they come available as well.
Yeah. Like picks, does like, I'm literally just trying to like think of potential moves, Ingram, Daniels, Hawkins in a first or 2 firsts or something for Durant. I mean, it gives the Suns depth. It, reduces their cap hit by like, God, I think it'd be pretty damn close to like 5 or 6 million. Yeah, that's I don't know, man. I'm not saying it's a good idea for either team. I actually don't know if that helps either team, to be honest with you. But Suns need depth. Whatever. I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard to come up with deals for all of these teams that we're talking about, but especially for Brandon Ingram. I think he will get moved, though. I think you have to move Ingram.
Yep. Yeah, I think I'm there as well.
Okay, other things we have to talk about with the Pelicans. Jonas Valanciunas. I don't know what happens with him this summer.
Well,
truthfully.
But the thing is, like, what Nance is back on, he has 1 more year. So, but like, he's not your starting 5. And so, yeah, I mean, that puts you in a tough spot if you're the Pelicans.
You have no replacement option.
Exactly.
Honestly, like, I'm kind of wondering if we talked about with the Lakers that I think it's more likely that the Pelicans extend that pick out to next year because it's just like a better, better draft, everything like that. I'm wondering if they take it this year to try to find a big, because if you're looking for one thing in this draft, it is a big. Like, if you can be at number 17, there's a decent chance you can get like Kyle Filipowski, who really works next to Zion as like a dribble pass shoot big.
Well, and so that's what's it like in this range would be Filipowski, who makes sense, right? The stretch thing. Misi, probably not as much sense, especially kind of the rawness. You have, I would
Tyler
have
Smith, very raw, like Deron Holmes, interesting.
I would have Deron Holmes in this range. I'm a little higher than some, but I think Deron Holmes is really, really good. And I will say Deron stretched the floor this year at Dayton. And so if you're looking for that, he can do that or show that he could do that. Edey doesn't stretch the floor at all, but if you need just somebody to come play 20 minutes, like, I don't think that makes a lot of, but there's names in this range.
Well, the other name would be, a guy that you and I have not loved throughout the process, but Khalil Ware is like another name that like could be in this range very plausibly.
And I think I stomach some of those guys, Sam, if I have 2 picks there, you know what I mean? Like if I can take one of those guys and then especially some of them like Ware and then have another pick where I can go get a wing or, one of these, I don't know. I like their guard situation with Alvarado, but maybe they don't feel like they need to though. Maybe the rest of the roster is rounded out well enough.
Yeah. Like the more we talk this through, the more I wonder if they should take this pick this year. It's 17 and, the Lakers are probably going to be better next year if LeBron comes back. So if they take that pick this year, you potentially try and like get a long-term answer at the big position where this draft like has a few options that could potentially shoot next to Zion. The more I think about this, the more I think that they really should like probably do this, I guess. But yeah, like we'll see what happens there. They have 21 as well though. So like, it's not like they need to have 17 to do this. Like they can just do this at 21.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say is you still, I don't think all of those guys are off the board at 21. I don't know that I don't think either of us think Filipowski lasts to 21, but I think we're both higher than most on him. I would say most of the other guys we've talked about probably are still there at 21. So
yeah, you could find an answer that like makes some sense with them for sure. Najee Marshall, unrestricted free agent. If I'm him, I think I'm going elsewhere just because I think he can play.
I think
yeah, like I love that he's tough. I love that he's physical.
He defends.
Like there's that one quote from Willie Green talking about who was it? Talking about Herb Jones like being their Swiss Army knife. And then if someone asked like if Herb Jones is the Swiss Army knife, like what's Najee Marshall? And Willie Green just said the knife. And I was like, that's an amazing quote first and foremost. And it's so like true about his game. He's just like tough and defends and Like,
and he made shots
yeah,
this year. He made shots. He's young. Yeah, I think the Pelicans should do everything they can to keep him. I think it works with everything they're doing. If I'm Najee, I would think that I could go get paid, make more money. And again, I know we can
and
I would
for
love
him though,
Najee Marshall in Detroit. I would absolutely love him in Detroit.
have a bigger role though for
No,
me. Like
yes.
Najee's 26. Like if I'm his representation, I am trying to like go out there and get, 3 years, 30 million or something with a player option on the end of it. So I can hit the market again at 28 after playing, hopefully some real time.
Yep.
And then going, you know what I mean?
No, I agree 100%. Again, if I'm the Pelicans, I love the idea of keeping him because I have all of these guys I can play. If I'm Najee and his representation, I am going to get paid and I'm going to get a bigger role than the 19 minutes a night I played for the Pelicans. This is a guy I think should be playing 25 to 30 minutes a night, potentially starting a lot of those games. I think he's very, very good at basketball.
I think he's really a useful basketball player.
Yep.
I don't know if he's a starter, but like he's definitely a guy that plays 25 minutes a night to me. And look, this year he played 19, right? I'm not saying that he's, that they've like underused him like substantially or anything. They just have a lot of guys like
they have really good players. Yeah. Herb Jones and Trey Murphy are awesome.
Yeah. I think he's more like, 327, something like that. Like that's the range for me, like $9-ish million a year. Jose Alvarado is an interesting one. Similarly to Herb Jones last year, they have options on the table that they can do. They can do an extension this summer by declining his team option and getting him paid a little bit more early. They can pick up the team option and extend him off of it. They can just pick up the team option and like take this into unrestricted free agency next summer. I don't think I would do that. I would probably just try to like get Jose Alvarado like under a contract now and see what I can do there. He's extension eligible. There are just a lot of different ways that you can kind of do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I've said it. He's one of my favorite players in the league. The energy changes when he steps on the floor. He plays so hard. And if you ever just really focus on Jose Alvarado, like just watch a Pelicans game and just watch him, he does all of the little things that I love that players do. At his size, he's rotating to box out the big on the weak side. He's setting weak side flares. He's directing people where to go offensively. He's cutting to open up that side of like all of the flow of the offense stuff, all of the defensive stuff. I love his game, and I think he's an impactful player, a meaningful player that they should absolutely pay and keep around.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big fan of Jose Alvarado as like a great backup point guard in the NBA. Those guys, 7 million a year, something like that, 7-8 million, a bit, maybe 9 even, like wouldn't be crazy to me, but you could maybe reduce that number by like declining the option this year and then like kind of stretching it out over 4 years as opposed to like extending 3 years on top of the team option. So, maybe you could do something like decline the team option in like 425, 430, maybe 430 we would say, instead of doing like team option and then 328 or 330 or whatever. Yeah.
Yep. Nope.
So
I like it.
To shake up those Ingram, I would say that's the big thing you have to do. They have to find an answer at center, be it keeping Jonas. Jonas is like an ass kicker, man. I love that dude. It's just like with Zion, it's not a great fit. It could be that like if they can't find a great answer, it could be like a 1-year deal for Jonas.
I was gonna bring that up. Like, do you just sign him to a 1 year? I think somebody in the mock draft I did, I think somebody took Misi for them, and my thoughts of that was then you have to bring Jonas back. Like you have to. Misi is not a guy that's going to be ready to play that load right away. So then you bring back Jonas on a 1-year deal.
Yeah, but this team looks different next year, I think is my take. Like the guys that you have for sure are Zion, Herb, and Trey. And then, probably Dyson Daniels and Jordan Hawkins. And I would guess that CJ is more likely to be there than Ingram for sure. But I think, this team probably does not have Brandon Ingram next year, just reading the tea leaves. Not saying that I know these things. I'm saying reading the tea leaves. I would say probably not Najee Marshall. And then Jonas is tough. Like, you just don't know what that could look like at the end of the day.
For sure.
But like Jonas is a real ass kicker and like was a real piece of why they were successful this year. Like losing him you can't lose him for nothing.
Yeah.
Like you can't have like no option with him, right? Because he averaged 12 points and 9 rebounds this year. He played every single game this year.
It's amazing
for them. Like you just really need an option there. You need something that you can go to beyond Jonas Valanciunas.
Yep.
That's all we've got here on the Pelicans.